Emperor's Throne. I thought I was getting an easy ride when we received our new posting. Rotated from the front to defend triage, protect the forward medical camp. Usually a cakewalk. But do not think me a coward. I don't deserve that. I have been fighting for months against things you would never even believe existed. It's one thing to see the vids, the posters, to believe the recruitment officers. Living it is different. Our lines have been smashed by the filth. What was once a stationing miles behind lines was now the last inch in our defences in this sector. The Xenos had come at us in their droves, their oceans. Their weapons were crude, but it did not matter. Their numbers were inexhaustible. They crashed against our lines across the entire sector. At first, we thought it was just a barbaric charge. Xenos are animals. But it was not. They were probing us, testing us, working out the exact damage we could inflict on them, where, when, and how. We treated it like a game then, counting numbers we had shot down and marked notches on our guns or helmets. We laughed and even called shots as challenges to each other then. Headshots only, gut shots only. We were so smug. Pride goeth before the fall, as they say. How things fell so quickly. From shooting fish in a barrel, we went to manically trying to keep them back. I watched as they simply rolled over Hill 435. It had everything a guardsman could wish for in a defence. Razor wire, heavy weapon emplacements, ammunition like a bottomless well. We thought it impregnable. To be honest, I thought it was over the top. Holy Throne, how I was a fool then. We all were. It took less than an hour to approach and then simply swarm the hill. No matter what we threw at them, they kept on coming. As they crested the hill, I realised how we had underestimated them. So many. Their primitive projectile weapons I thought were almost pointless, but then the sky darkened. We were watching the hill. We didn't take cover, not one of us. Then they struck. Shafts of wood with metal heads. So primitive, yet when they hit in such numbers, we were decimated. So many dead in that first volley. Pierced multiple times by those simple shafts of wood, but no less lethal for being so simple. Entire ranks of us went down. We scattered into the trenches. We hid from the rain of wood and metal, but that was their goal. The rain from behind the hill made us hide while their horde ate the distance between the hill and our lines. They were on us in what felt like seconds, among us, killing us. I never thought my bayonet drill would ever be used, but it saved me time and time again. I lunged and pulled back, lunged and pulled back. Blood and viscera, their bodies and ours covering the ground, making it slippery, making it hell. That was the first day. The first of many, many days. Months. No matter how many of them we kill, they keep coming. Don't know. I sort of respect them. We must seem like the scum here. We're invading their world. They were here first. But why doesn't matter anymore. It's us or them. And at the moment, it seems like it's going to be them. Behind this last line, our last in this sector, stands the forward medical building. Inside are every wounded soldier from this entire front. Thousands. If, when, they cross this last line, they will be in there. I dread to think, but I know what will happen. They will crash through the doors, will stream into every corridor, every ward, every bay. None will be spared. Imagine that. Lying in your bed, unable to move, unable to defend yourself, while these horrors rush in and kill everyone before you, knowing they will end you too. I think I am lucky. At least I will look into their eyes and it will be swift when it happens. At least I can go down fighting. It begins. Our artillery opens up from miles behind the lines. They bombard the valley. But they are fools. They should be packing up and moving. I don't know where, but they should be running. The Xenos are coming. The next half hour is like an eternity or a second. Time has no meaning in the fray. I ignore the rain from the sky, the wooden rain of death. I don't care. I stand, firing furiously, firing continuously. The repetitive action a mark of my training, not my control. I fire and fire, reload and fire again. I go through energy pack after energy pack, but it is not enough. Not nearly enough. So many of them. So few of us. I reach down to my belt, but there is nothing there. I am out. My lasgan now nothing more than a club. I look up and down the line. So many dead. Hunched or sprawled, littering the trench like broken dolls. My friends, my company, gone. All these shafts of wood jutting out of them. The horde charges forever forward. I have a minute maybe. The noise of them is deafening. The shock of seeing I am nearly the last of my entire company still breathing. My ears deceived me. I drop my last spent cartridge and then fix bayonet. I will take one of them with me. Just one. Like a heroic vid, my rebelling mind has music playing. Voices like a choir exalting the Emperor. Ha! Well, at least I lasted until my death to go mad. I stand and prepare for death. I see a last wave of projectiles fill the skies and I drop my lasgun and open my arms as I slump to my knees. I prepare for it. I close my eyes. The music, the holy music gets louder, deafening almost, as I prepare to join the Emperor. Perhaps he welcomes me. A shadow passes over me. I hear the ricochet of metal on metal. Wooden shafts clatter to the ground around me. I open my eyes, and then I see her. Towering over me in black armour, power armour. She stood between me and death. I am alive because of her. The singing is not a dream. I snap a look from side to side and my jaw drops. Lines of them, the wood bouncing off their armour. In their hands the weapons of the Emperor himself, the holy bolter. They walk forward. They are not stopping at the trench. They are advancing into the horde. The guns shoot out and Xenos die in their droves, exploding like the Emperor himself is obliterating them. She stops firing as two of her sisters pass us. She takes off her helmet, just to speak to me. I can barely hear her over the artillery, the bolters screaming, the song of battle and praise of the Emperor that is issuing from these dark-clad women all around me. She looks down and smiles. She nods towards the hospital. I look at it while she kneels down and whispers in my ear. This will not happen unless all of us are one. He will not answer unless it is all of us. Say the words. I look. I do not understand. I see the building is dark, but there is activity inside. Singing. A beautiful song, but terrible also. An exaltation to the Emperor. She whispers again. Son of the Emperor, warrior of humanity, you know the words. Say them now. I know. They come to me. The Emperor protects. No, warrior of light. Not with your mouth. Not with your lips. Say them with your heart. Say them with your soul. Bring his power. I look down and nearly weep, so much is happening. So much is going on. But then I look up again. I look at the triage and think it harder than I have ever thought it before. As instructed, I say it with my heart, but even so, it cannot be contained. It sallies out of my mouth as a bellow. The Emperor protects! And then I see a miracle. A miracle. As if I caused it, but it cannot be me. Light blazes from every last window in the triage. It is like a bomb has gone off inside. I hear it building, what I think is a huge screaming at first. But then, as the doors open, I hear it clearer. As my injured brothers and sisters pour out of every door, every window, they charge. It is a bellow, not a scream. They are armed with lasguns that seem to be glittering with light. All of them. Thousands of them, flooding out like a tidal wave to meet the Xenos. As they pass me, I am agog. Men I knew to be crippled, women I knew to be maimed. They all charge as one, healed. The sister firmly puts her arm under mine and lifts me up. She passes me an energy pack from my lasgun. She smiles at me while putting her helmet back on, then nods in the direction of the Xenos, the direction her sisters are leading the army I thought destroyed. Come, warrior of light, let us not be left out. Come, let us smite the unclean for the Emperor. I snatch the energy pack and slam it home. I check my bayonet is fixed properly. Then I look back at her and I grin. For the Emperor. Then we charge. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the forces and factions of the Warhammer 40k universe. So, at last, we come back to the Adepta Sororitas and the Sisters of Battle to wipe away the calumny of that disastrous prognostication that I penned what feels like an eon ago. To even introduce this faction, I feel we must look at the bigger picture today. A very big picture indeed. For few truly understand the vastness that is the Imperium, the sheer scope of it. One could take a stroll to one's garden on a cloudless night and then look up and see the Imperium. Even with the assistance of a top-of-the-range telescope, everything one would see is the Imperium. Every twinkling light, every star, and every system that surrounds it. That is the Imperium of mankind. It is said that there are over 1 million worlds in the Imperium. Take a moment to grasp how mind-bendingly vast that is. All of it is the Imperium of Man. But why do I mention this? Why do I brook this subject now? Simple. To grasp the import of the faction we are about to discuss, the faction we are about to discover together. For the uninitiated may look at the model range, the basics of their attire, and may well scoff. Nuns with guns is what is oft said. This is, of course, only ignorance. It may have been true at one point, before the faction had been developed, but now it could not be further from the truth. This is a rich and diverse faction on the tabletop, with sumptuous, splendid figures, and intriguing and interesting rules and tactics. But it is far, far more than that. They are now a fundamental part of the rich tapestry that is the grim darkness of the future, the Imperium of Man. The recent codex has built on that which has gone before, the development of this faction from a bit of a gag to an unbelievably important and diverse, well-sculpted and fully fleshed-out organization, the Adepta Sororitas and their chamber militant, that are the Sisters of Battle, have well and truly blossomed. For the Adepta Sororitas is everywhere. It is interwoven into the very fabric of the Imperium, to the extent that very few arenas are free from its presence and its influence. They are a feared force on the battlefield. They're an irreplaceable factor in diplomacy. They teach the youth of the noble houses, while watching said houses for any tiny slither of apostasy or heresy. They are forerunners for the expansion of the Imperium into the very fringes of the galaxy, and they are the healers most trusted with the injured soldiery. They defend the myriad shrine worlds across the Imperium, and they bring fire and wrath to the unclean, and root out the cancer of the faithless, the mutant, the heretic, the witch. The most important thing one needs to know about the Adepta Sororitas at large, and the Sisters of Battle in specific, is their faith. This is only an introduction to this huge organization that has tentacles in so many of the arenas of the Imperium, so it behooves me to start small and then progress to more expansive entries in the future. So, gentle listener, let us explore the very beginnings of this order. For this we will have to very briefly, criminally almost, discuss how the Imperium changed from a secular and atheistic organization into the semi-authoritarian and theocratic entity it is today, as this underpins the entire point. Faith. The Imperial Truth. For the whys of the beginnings of the Imperium, please see my entry for Rogal Dawn, or Astra Militarum, until I perform separate entries on the Unification Wars, the Great Crusade, and the terror of the Horus Heresy. I believe this is a very good place to gain a basic understanding of the birth and formative years of the Imperium of Man. That said, let us move on. The Imperial Truth was the initial dream of the Emperor. He is often stated to have decreed that the most dangerous of all things, the biggest threat to human development and the race entire, was religion and faith. While he walked the stars and spoke with his people, the human race, he was adamant that this should be not only policy of his rule, but its very goal, the eradication of religion and superstition. This was to be hand in glove with the goal of unifying the lost civilizations of humanity across the stars, and to then defend them. His policy was also the annihilation of all Xenos cultures that might be a threat to humanity, but that would take us off point. The Imperial Truth was the firmly held theory that there were no gods, there were no spirits, demons, afterlife, reincarnation, or need for redemption. It was hocus pocus and a dire threat to the very well-being of humanity, as all religion would do is retard humanity and have it mire itself in hatred, war, and stupidity. Science, logic, empirical data, and progress were to be the base stones on which his Imperium were to be built and then maintained. It was not to last. When the Emperor was struck down, his body all but destroyed, his direct influence on humanity was removed. He was to exist only to continue as a figurehead and a source of power for the Astronomicon, which I will explain at another time. The Imperium was dealt an almost mortal blow by the Horus Heresy, and devastation and fear were rife. Humans are simple creatures when all is boiled away. When the fear of the future became too much, small sects that had venerated the Emperor as a god began to flourish. But it was not entirely illogical either, for the Emperor, the master of mankind, had displayed capabilities, powers, and wisdom beyond anything that a normal human could emulate. The step from godlike power to being a god was a very short step indeed. Thus, over the next 2 millennia, the sects that extolled him as the living god of humanity grew in power. The misery of the age, the difficulty of everyone's existence, the struggle that all felt was almost insurmountable, made them turn to these religions in ever-increasing numbers. To synopsize a millennia or more is rough treatment of the law, but eventually one sect grew to dominate and absorb all others. The temple of the Savior Emperor became so commonplace, so powerful, so all-pervasive that in Millennium 32 it became the state religion, and the Adeptus Ministorum was formed, the Church. With that, the dreams of a secular empire were washed away. It went swiftly from being the norm to worship the Emperor to being a crime not to believe in his godhead and to be a vocal adherent to the imperial cult. As time went on, the power of the ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Ministorum, became so much they had armed forces under their direct control, could issue censure against entire worlds and declare any a heretic and have them removed. Alas, as is always the case, power corrupts. Inevitably, a demagogue arose and attempted to wrestle power from all. For a time, he very nearly succeeded. In the 36th millennium, the galaxy was struck by a wave of warp storms. These storms halted much interstellar traffic, as had happened in the Age of Strife, but to a much lesser degree, and panic was rife. In this time, fear led many to give even more power to the Church, for prayer solves all issues to a scared human. Thus did the imperial cult gain such power that they took control of the Administorum, the administrative wing of the Imperium. The ecclesiarch, akin to a pontiff of the entire Imperium, then ran rampant. This period is now known as the Age of Apostasy. For this, I will lean on the existing lore in the newest codex, as I find I cannot even come close to matching its eloquence and brevity. To quote, "In the 36th millennium, the tyrant Gojvandir usurped the position of both ecclesiarch and high lord of the administratum. He achieved this through a combination of bribery, coercion, blackmail, and outright murder, and in doing so managed to secure an unprecedented level of authority. Since the fall of the Emperor, no one had controlled both the sprawling bureaucracy through which the millions of worlds of the Imperium were organized, and the faith that kept humanity united against its myriad enemies. With such unparalleled powers of command, Vandir sought to bring the Imperium under his heel, giving rise to the Reign of Blood, in which countless billions died and whole planets burned. The Reign of Blood continued for decades. With each passing year, Vandir grew increasingly psychotic, and the numbers of those who were burnt in his fires climbed exponentially. At the height of his madness, a sect known as the Confederation of Light rose to prominence on the world of Dimamar, led by a then unknown man called Sebastian Thor. The sect denounced the brutal rule of Vandir and began spreading a message of hope across the Imperium, a message that was readily accepted by peoples who had long lived under the yoke of sadistic oppression. Vandir sent a force from Terra to crush the Confederation of Light and execute the upstart Thor. But shortly after its departure, the entire fleet was destroyed, torn apart by a terrifyingly powerful warp storm in an area space still known and feared as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. Unchecked, the Confederation of Light was able to expand its influence, gaining support from scores of systems willing to join them in rebelling against the tyrannical High Lord. Through masterful oration, Sebastian Thor rallied millions to his cause, steadily gathering might to match the forces still loyal to Vandir. Yet deliverance only came when the Adepts of Mars, Space Marines, and Adeptus Custodes chose to side with Thor. Preparations were made to assault the ecclesiastical palace from without, while the Adeptus Custodes would attack Vandir from behind his defensive lines. Though the combined might of the forces moving against him were considerable, Vandir was far from defenseless. Early on in the Reign of Blood, the High Lord had been informed by his extensive network of spies of a small cult of some 500 individuals based on the little-known agri-world of San Leor. Known as the Daughters of the Emperor, the members of this sect were entirely devoted to worship of the Emperor and maintaining inner purity. They studied ancient arts of war, clearing their minds of worldly considerations in order to hone their battle skills over the course of a lifetime. His interest piqued. Vandir informed the Daughters of the Emperor that he would honor them with an ecclesiastical visit. When Vandir arrived on San Leor, he was informed by the Daughters of the Emperor that they did not recognize him as an envoy of the God Emperor, triggering a wave of fury amongst his sizable retinue. But the High Lord, at this time having not yet succumbed to the full ravages of insanity, had prepared a demonstration to prove his status. He commanded one of his guards to shoot him to show that he was shielded by the Emperor's favor. The guard shot his last pistol, and after a blinding flash of light, the Daughters of the Emperor saw clearly that Vandir remained unharmed and fell to their knees in worship. As Vandir later boasted to his scribes, he had correctly guessed that the isolated sect had no knowledge of the conversion field produced by the rosarius he was wearing. Having sworn oaths of fealty to the High Lord, the Daughters of the Emperor were instated as the ecclesiastical bodyguard. Their culture of purity and martial excellence was augmented by new forms of weaponry, and their dedication to the protection of Vandir became legendary throughout the Imperium. When Vandir's legitimacy as ecclesiarch was challenged, these elite soldiers were his blade of rebuttal, and when the Holy Synod of the Ministorum conspired to kill their leader, Vandir's bodyguards strode into their chamber, locked the doors, and emerged several hours later carrying the severed heads of every cardinal present. When the forces united by Sebastian Thor besieged the ecclesiastical palace, Vandir's bodyguards were instrumental in holding the attacking forces at bay. Over several months, the outer sections of the palace were reduced to rubble, but the central complex that housed the High Lord's throne room remained an impenetrable fortress. Vandir's warriors stood firm against the brutal assault. Their unflinching faith in the Emperor and his favored servant fueled their indomitable fighting spirit. But while their efforts were focused on repelling the invaders, another force moved to conquer the ecclesiastical palace from within. As guardians of the Emperor and the Golden Throne, the Adeptus Custodes possessed incomparable knowledge of the Imperial Palace, including the vast wings in which the ecclesiastical palace was located. A small contingent of custodians worked their way through the hidden labyrinth of passageways that snaked beneath the palace, emerging not far from Vandir's audience chamber. There they were confronted by 6 warriors of the ecclesiarchal bodyguard. The leader of the custodians laid down his weapons and tried to convince Vandir's faithful that the High Lord they served was an enemy of mankind, of the Imperium, and of the Emperor himself. But the ecclesiarch's servants were not swayed by these words alone. The custodian saw that only one option remained for an alliance. He entreated the women, barring his path, to follow him back through the winding tunnels so he could lead them to the most sacred place in all the galaxy, the chambers of the Golden Throne, where the Emperor sat in repose. The 6 bodyguards were to see what no one but the companions of the Adeptus Custodes and the Space Marine Primarchs had seen in 6 millennia, and were sworn to secrecy on pain of death. What the 6 saw in those chambers has never been recorded, but when they emerged, their hearts burned with anger. They returned through the tunnels to the ecclesiarchal palace, where their leader, Alicia Dominica, spoke to her order of the High Lord's fathomless corruption. Renouncing their duties as Vandir's bodyguard, the daughters of the Emperor followed Dominica to the private hall where the ecclesiarch was bunkered. They found him busied in study, his chambers in anarchy and his scribes long fled. Seeing his supposed bodyguard there, Vandir launched into a bloodthirsty tirade, ordering them to march out and slaughter the invaders. Dominica looked upon him coldly, and with words that would one day be engraved upon the sarcophagus that holds her body, she pronounced his judgment. You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your own decrees have seated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and now it is time for you to die. Dominica lofted her power sword high for Gauge Vandir to see. With an uncompromising shake of his head, the High Lord replied to his former bodyguard that he was too busy to die. At this, Dominica brought her energy-wreathed blade down, decapitating the traitor and cleaving through the rosarius he had worn since the day he first met the daughters of the Emperor. The reign of blood died with Vandir, but the age of apostasy took many more centuries to quell. Sebastian Thor stood trial for sedition, but the purity of his intent and the hatred held for the deposed tyrant saw him not only found guiltless, but led to him being instated as the new ecclesiarch. At the behest of the other High Lords of Terra, a great number of changes to the Adeptus Ministorum were then implemented, the most radical of which was the implementation of the Decree Passive. By this edict, the ecclesiarchy was ordered to relinquish its control of its standing military forces, giving over the bulk of its armies to the Astra Militarum and its fleets to the Imperial Navy. But Sebastian Thor insisted that the daughters of the Emperor were unaffected by the decree. He knew that military might was needed to defend the faith, and so the daughters were incorporated fully into the Ministorum and renamed the Adepta Sororitas. This caused much vexation among the other High Lords, but they had no recourse to oppose the newly appointed ecclesiarch, nor the powers he still held. You see, the Decree Passive stated that the ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Ministorum, could have no men under arms, and thus the Adepta Sororitas is purely women, and thus circumvents this law. End quote. Another interesting and incredibly important thing that came out of the Age of Apostasy was the Ordo Hereticus. The Inquisition already had 2 wings, the Ordo Xenos, which hunted and destroyed the alien and all of its vile influence, and the Ordo Malleus, who were tasked with rooting out the influence of the demonic and warp-tainted. The Ordo Hereticus was to watch the imperial cult and all of its adherents, its many churches across the entire Imperium. They were to watch for heresy, any break from the mainstream beliefs of the cult, but also to make sure that the ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Ministorum, never overstepped its reach again. Whenever a cleric of any rank garnered themselves a military force to prosecute a crusade against heretics, mutants, or witches, they were watched like hawks, The instant the very carefully agreed parameters and goals of a crusade were met, it was the Ordo Hereticus that would then order said forces to be disbanded or absorbed back into the Departamento Munitorum, the Imperial Guard or Navy. Never again would the Church be trusted with power such as it had in the Age of Apostasy that was the doorway to the Age of Blood. Never. But why am I mentioning this? Well, gentle listener, it was at the inception of the Ordo Hereticus that the Adepta Sororitas' militant or army contingent was sworn to be an ally of the Hereticus, to be its very own chamber militant. Should the Ordo Hereticus find heresy, befoulment by mutants or psychos, or any other uncleanness, they can call upon the Sisters of Battle. As they should, for there are few forces that are as able, well-equipped, or as steadfast as the Sisters outside of any but the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. Now that we know the history and origin of the Sisters, let us now discuss what they are now, and what makes them so special. For every faction in the grim darkness of the future has its own very potent allure. Firstly, a brief understanding of their many roles. For many will think that the Adepta is just the Sisters of Battles. It is not. The Adepta Sororitas is the umbrella term for the combined orders entire. But it is not just the Sisters of Battle. For the Sororitas have as many orders, duties and roles in civilian life as they do orders militant who wage war. Now, I shall again lean on existing wisdom, because, well, frankly, it is so well put. To quote, "The daughters of the Emperor were more than a community of warriors, and devoted themselves to a wide range of disciplines by which they could serve the God Emperor. For many of these disciplines survived the Age of Apostasy, and have been further developed by the Adepta Sororitas through specialized categories of non-militant orders. Orders Dialogus. The Sisters of the Orders Dialogus serve as scholars and advisors. They are expert translators of texts both human and Xenos, holy and blasphemous, and spend years learning languages used in esoteric scripts. Much of their study is devoted to collating ancient scripts that give accounts of the God Emperor before his interment within the Holy Throne. Humans on many of the worlds rediscovered during the Great Crusade recorded the coming of the Emperor, as did those Xenos species upon whom his fury reigned. The Sister Dialogus translate these accounts, their long-forgotten language of origin, into Imperial High Gothic, and through them reveal more of the Emperor's glory. The Orders Dialogus also frequently call upon their unparalleled expertise in cryptography. Their ability to unlock obscure ciphers and find patterns across vast reams of communiques ensure that the Adepta Sororitas, as well as the Ecclesiarchy at large, have access to intelligence on their enemies, both within the Imperium and beyond. Sisters Dialogus also provide many services for the Inquisition, using their skills to interpret heretical meanings hidden in seemingly mundane speech and text, and thereby bringing secretive traitors to justice. In a war zone, Sisters Dialogus act as conduits through which canonesses of militant orders can intone commands and prayers of defiance, ensuring that formations operating in isolation remain in communication with their spiritual leader. Large contingents from the Orders Dialogus also remain on a world after the enemy has been purged, assisting other ecclesiastical servants as they scour the planet for traces of heresy. The most senior sisters of the Orders Dialogus maintained the ancient texts held within the Vault of Origins. Only the highest-ranking members of the Ecclesiarchy are allowed access to this most holy archive, for it is rumoured that the heaviest of secrets regarding the events of the Age of Apostasy and Vandir's Reign of Blood are locked away within it. Orders Famulus. The Orders Famulus form a network of chambers, advisors and diplomats whose sacred duty is to guide the Imperium's noble families in working towards the ultimate good of mankind. Sisters of these orders play a crucial role in brokering trading agreements between obstinate planetary governors, forging alliances between powerful plutocratic families, and arranging marriages to continue the lineages of the Emperor's most loyal and useful subjects. When a planet, system or subsector is faced with direct hostilities, the Sisters Famulus coordinate the efforts of those over whom they have oversight, ensuring that a noble household has everything they require to effectively fight and die for the Imperium. Concomitant to their diplomatic duties, the Orders Famulus also provide the ecclesiarchy with watchful eyes throughout the Imperium. A Sister Famulus's presence among the upper echelons of society allows her to closely observe the dealings of the most influential individuals, from appointed bureaucrats and strong-armed tyrants to rogue traders and novice nobility dignitaries. Should the activities of these powerful people in any way go against the dictates of the Adeptus Ministorum, the Sister's reports to her superiors may result in stringent countermeasures. Confessors may be sent to extract admissions of heresy, and in extreme cases the Order's militant are alerted to cases of widespread treachery. Families who have held aloft positions for generations have been eradicated in their entirety, their crypts incinerated and their names stricken from all records on the word of a Sister Famulus. Shepherding the nobility in this way is crucial to preserving the sanctity of the Imperium, and those who attempt to hide from the sight of the Ordo Famulus are seen as opponents of the Imperial Creed. In the course of their duties, Sisters Famulus often speak of how the Emperor manifests his will through his subjects, pointing to the miracles performed by the Imperium's many saints as evidence. Given that the Orders Famulus have access to the genealogical records of uncounted millions of Imperial citizens, and that they actively encourage diplomatic and familial unions between the most faithful members of the Imperial Society, it is unsurprising that their hand is often to be seen at work before, during, and after a manifestation of the Emperor's grace is recorded. Very much like the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, one might think. But why not? Sideline over. Orders Hospitaller. With the exception of the Adepta Sororitas chapters, the Orders Hospitaller provides surgeons, physicians, and nurses to all arms of the Imperial military. Sisters of these orders exhibit their faith by operating in grueling battlefield conditions, sawing off and cauterizing limbs that have been mangled by blasts of warp energy and digging living munitions from the guts of screaming soldiers. They perform these acts with an air of solemnity and compassion, and are often regarded as holy figures by the combatants under their care. Indeed, many Sisters Hospitaller have been canonized as saints posthumously for their miraculous skills. Sisters of the Orders Hospitaller can be found accompanying many branches of the Imperium's military, from Asta Militarum regiments to the personal armies of Inquisitors, as well as serving alongside the Sororitas of the Orders Militant. They are renowned for their skills both on and off the battlefield, and often deploy to war zones where new and grotesque weapons are being brought to bear against the Imperium's warriors. The sanctuaries of the Orders Hospitaller contain massive libraries detailing the most esoteric tools of death that mankind has encountered, accompanied by the extensive journals of sisters who have spent their lives researching how best to ameliorate their devastating effects. Some orders operate alongside the Ordo Sepulchrum in studying weaponized plagues, be they biological, technological, or demonical in origin, whereas others work to develop protections against psychic assaults. The Orders Hospitaller have been known to work in close conjunction with the Orders Famulus, mapping bloodlines and genealogy in order to stem the spread of mutation, combating the threat that aberrant evolution poses to humanity. Just as they study the effects of enemy weaponry on human soldiers, so too do the Orders Hospitaller dedicate themselves to understanding the physiology of their enemies. Where previously unknown xenos species are encountered, the Sisters Hospitaller work tirelessly to find weak spots in their biology. Ecclesiarchal confessors who rely on the expertise of these sisters to preserve the lives of those who are being questioned for heresy. It is not uncommon for a Sister Hospitaller to reattach limbs or suture mortal wounds multiple times before a confessor is able to extract the truth from a suspected heretic. There are many other types of orders that provide ancillary services within the Adepta Sororitas, as well as for the ecclesiarchy and the wider Imperium. In some cases, a single order is tasked with a particular focused duty and given their own designation, as is the case with the Order Fenestras, who maintain the illuminated armor glass panes of the Imperium's most holy shrines and cathedrals. Other types of orders carry out sacred duties that give them a great deal of influence within the God Emperor's domain. The Orders Sabine operate at the very edges of human space, accompanying the Ministerius Galaxia to newly rediscovered human worlds. They specialize in infiltrating the regressed and primitive societies that it is believed oppose the arrival of the Imperium. Sister Sabine set themselves up as prophets of the Emperor, preaching the Imperial Creed in secret or fomenting revolt against the religious leaders of a world. When the Missionarius Galaxia arrives and announces their presence to the world's peoples, the Sisters Sabine have already prophesied such an event, and they lead those natives sympathetic to the Imperial cult in a sudden and deadly coup against their leaders. Through her work, a Sister Sabine is often cut off from the Imperium for a great many years, perhaps only returning to Terra or Ophelia 7, once in her lifetime. The Orders Pronatus specialize in retrieving, guarding, studying, and repairing artifacts of value to the ecclesiarchy. This includes the uncounted thousands of holy relics revered by the peoples of the Imperium, as well as items captured by the forces of the Imperium that are considered too powerful or significant to be allowed to fall into enemy hands. Sisters Pronatus have the responsibility of maintaining and blessing the many banners and symbols of the Order Militant, and have even been called upon to reconstruct the livery of other imperial bodies. It was members of the Orders Pronatus who repaired the chapter banner of the Lamenters after their involvement in the Badab War, and they have also restored many of the Cadian regimental standards that were recovered after the 13th Black Crusade, cleansing every fibre in holy oil and recording the names of martyrs in golden thread. End quote. As you can see, the Adepta are nearly all pervasive in the Imperium. Now that we know the distinction and the multiple roles within the Adepta, let us get to the meat of the matter, that which we are all really here to understand, the Sisters of Battle. Akin to chapters of Space Marines, the Sisters have many orders. Just to list them now: Orders Majores, larger orders; the Order of our Martyred Lady; the Order of the Valorous Heart; the Order of the Bloody Rose; the Order of the Ebon Chalice; the Order of the Argent Shroud; the Order of the Sacred Rose. But there are also Orders Minores, smaller: the Order of the Glowing Chalice; the Order of the Thorn; the Order of the Iron Veil; the Order of the Ashen Shrine; the Order of the Wounded Heart; and lastly, the Order of the Golden Light. But thankfully, we are also able to create our own orders. As with so much of this phenomenal hobby, you may truly spread your creative wings should you have the desire. As long as your order adheres to rules of one of the existing orders, you can do what thou wilt with your own background. Magnificent. Just don't expect to have any accolades thrown your way if you try to invent rules and then attend a tournament. This will simply not stand. One day I shall perform entries for these mighty and magnificent orders, but that is not for today, as this is only an introduction. But what exactly is a Sister of Battle? Well, let me tell you, gentle listener. There are schools, academies, across the entire Imperium called the Schola Progenium. They are vast centers of training and excellence, where the very best of humanity are taken to be trained, molded, and equipped for very specific duties. From the Schola Progenium comes every officer of the Astra Militarum or the Navy, every priest, and every commissar. To say that this training is hard is to do it little justice, for those that are skilled at diplomacy or tuition are eventually sent to perform roles in the non-militant orders, but those who are of unshakable faith, who show a rugged nature and a natural preponderance to combat, are then taken and trained further. For they will be permitted to join the holy orders of the Sisters of Battle, if they are brave enough, if they are strong enough, if they are filled with the light of the Emperor's Creed and display enough faith. But again, please, do not think nuns with guns. Do not. Think more of an army of Sarah Connors, a force of Joan of Arcs, a battalion of Black Widows and Boudicas. They are everything a warrior should be. They are untouchable in close combat, more accurate than any sniper, and as driven as any commissar. They are lethality given mortal form. In all of the Imperium, only the Adepta Sororitas, the Space Marines, with all of their augmentations and almost superhuman enhancements, only they are more lethal than the Sisters of Battle. But even they cannot ignore the conviction that is carried in the hearts of the Sisters. The Sisters are also armed with the finest weapons the Imperium can produce, though not the match of the Space Marine power armor, for they do not have the black carapace or transhuman sinews of the Marine. They are almost impregnable to small arms fire and melee weapons, unless it is to be those wielded by the most powerful of all adversaries. But more than anything, even than these things, their training, their panoply of war, the Sisters have one distinct advantage over nearly any other formation that the Imperium deploys in the field: their faith. The faith of the Sisters is such that they can call down the protection of the God Emperor himself. Also, they can call down his wrath. Miracles are their stock in trade. The impossible happens across any theatre of war which they deign to grace. Missiles slam ineffectively against shimmering shields of pure light. Soldiers who were left dying in the dirt find themselves healed and energized and filled with an unquenchable holy wrath. But these are not psychic powers. No channeling over the warp, no. If the warp is used, it is wielded by the God Emperor of mankind. He merely hears their prayers. For the Sisters do not suffer a witch to live. In this, they are allies to the Black Templars and the clenched fist of the Ordo Hereticus of the Holy Inquisition. They will never be bowed, no matter how bloodied their enemy may think they are. They wield the Holy Bolter. Of course, it is not the match or the size or the penetrating power of the larger bolter used by their Space Marines. But even though it is smaller, it is lethal. I honestly could go on for hours, days even, on the majesty of this faction, this glorious gathering of female warriors, but I must let you return to your lives. But know that we shall see much, much more of the Sisters on this channel, for theirs is a story that must be told, in detail, in depth, as time goes by. As I leave you, I must say but one last thing. Whenever the Sisters of Battle are deployed, wherever they hear the call, they bring with them the blessing of the Emperor, and thus is made true the most oft-repeated line in all of the Imperium's forces. When the Sisters take the field, the prayer is made reality. The Emperor protects. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you enjoyed my introduction to the Sisters of Battle, then do please consider liking and subscribing. If you are a regular gentle listener and see the worth in what we are doing, then do please consider supporting us on Patreon. But only if your resources permit. If this is not possible, then do please consider sharing this video, if you feel it worthy. It would be a great boon. Now, I am very much looking forward to getting into more of the Sisters in the future, but trust me, we will get into it. Now, no matter what you do today, please do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.